What if I told you that the dog who saved your life when you were young is still watching over you right now? What if the cat who snuggled on your chest during your saddest nights never really left you? And what if one of America's most famous psychics showed that the connection between you and your beloved animals goes beyond death in ways that would completely change how you think about loss, love, and the true nature of consciousness? I'm talking about Edgar Cayce, the man who, while in a sleep-like state, gave over 14,000 recorded readings that talked about everything from health and healing to the mysteries of life after death. But today we're exploring something that might be the most emotionally powerful part of his work. Because when Cayce talked about animals and what happens to them after they pass away, he wasn't just sharing information. He was showing a truth so deep, so comforting, and so amazing that it changes everything about how we understand our relationship with the creatures we love. So get comfortable, because what you're about to learn isn't just about animals. It's about you. It's about love that never dies. And it's about a reality far more beautiful and connected than you ever imagined. The universal experience. Let me ask you something personal, and I want you to really think about this as I'm speaking. Have you ever lost a pet? Maybe it was your childhood friend. The dog who knew exactly when you needed comfort. The cat who seemed to understand your feelings better than your own family. The horse who was with you through your teenage years. Or maybe it was something smaller but just as special. A bird, a rabbit, a hamster who taught you about taking care of something and unconditional love. Do you remember that moment when you realized they were gone? Not just not there physically, but gone forever. That heavy feeling in your chest, that feeling like a piece of your heart had been torn away. The house suddenly too quiet, the empty food bowl you couldn't bring yourself to put away. And then came the questions, the ones that kept you awake at night. Where did they go? Are they okay? Will I ever see them again? Do they know how much I love them? If this is hitting close to home, I need you to do something for me right now. I need you to like this video. Not because I'm asking for engagement, but because what we're about to explore together requires us to be open and honest. And when you hit that like button, you're telling me you're ready to go on this journey. You're ready to discover something that might change how you see death, love, and the invisible threads that connect all living beings. Because here's what I've learned in researching this topic. Edgar Cayce didn't just offer comfort to people who lost pets. He showed a cosmic truth that most people never hear about. A truth that suggests consciousness, love, and connection work by laws far more beautiful and mysterious than we've been taught. Cayce's extraordinary gift. But before we dive into what Cayce showed about animals, you need to understand just how extraordinary this man was. Because what he could do goes against everything we think we know about human consciousness. Picture this. It's 1910. A quiet photographer from Kentucky lies down on a simple couch. His secretary sits nearby with a stenographer, ready to write down every word. Cayce closes his eyes, enters what looks like a deep sleep, and then something impossible happens. The man who only finished 8th grade begins speaking in perfect medical language about diseases doctors haven't even diagnosed yet. He describes the exact location of internal injuries in people he's never met. He recommends treatments using substances that won't be discovered by science for decades. And he's never wrong. Not almost never. Never. Over 14,000 documented readings. Medical doctors, scientists, and researchers studying his work for over a century. And they cannot explain how Edgar Cayce knew what he knew. But here's where it gets even more mysterious. Because Cayce didn't just diagnose physical illnesses. In his trance state, he seemed to have access to everything. Past lives, future events, the nature of the soul, the structure of reality itself. And when people asked him about their beloved animals, about what happens to them after death, his answers were so specific, so detailed, and so consistently loving that they created a completely new understanding of consciousness and connection. Think about this for a moment. A man enters an altered state of consciousness and gains access to information that spans time, space, and dimensions. And when he uses this incredible gift to look behind the veil of death, What he sees about our animal companions is nothing short of miraculous. The first revelation: animals have souls. Now, this might seem obvious to you. Of course, animals have souls, right? Anyone who's looked into the eyes of a dog or felt the purr of a cat against their chest knows there's something deep there, something conscious, something eternal. But you have to understand, this was revolutionary thinking. In Cayce's time, and honestly still today, in many religious and scientific circles, animals were viewed as just biological machines. No souls, no consciousness that survives death, no spiritual importance beyond their physical existence. Cayce completely shattered this belief in reading after reading. He spoke of animals as conscious beings with their own spiritual growth. He described them as having what he called soul patterns, not identical to human souls, but real consciousness that continues beyond physical death. But here's where it gets really interesting. Cayce didn't just say animals have souls. He explained how their souls work, how they're different from human souls, and why the relationships we form with them are actually part of our spiritual development. Listen to this carefully, because this is where your understanding of your pet might completely shift. According to Cayce, animals exist in what he called group souls. Imagine consciousness not as individual pieces floating separately, but as connected streams of awareness. Your dog doesn't just have his own individual soul. He's connected to a larger dog consciousness. Your cat isn't just herself. She's part of an eternal cat awareness that spans dimensions. And here's the beautiful part. When an animal chooses to bond with a human, they're actually individualizing from that group consciousness. They're becoming more themselves through their relationship with you. In other words, your love for your pet doesn't just comfort them. It actually helps them grow spiritually. Let that sink in for a moment. Every time you looked into your dog's eyes with love, you weren't just sharing a moment. You were participating in their spiritual growth. You were helping them become more conscious, more individual, more eternal. And if you're starting to realize that your relationship with your pet was far more important than you ever imagined, let me know in the comments. Write deeper if this is opening up a new perspective for you, because understanding this is crucial for what comes next. The second revelation: where they go. So where do they go when they die? This is the question that bothers every pet owner, the one that makes us stare at empty beds and unused toys, wondering if somewhere, somehow, they still exist. Cayce's answer was both surprising and deeply comforting. According to his readings, animals don't go through the same after-death experience as humans. They don't have karma to work out. They don't reincarnate through multiple lifetimes of learning and growth. Their spiritual journey is different, simpler in some ways, but just as beautiful. When an animal dies, Cayce explained, their consciousness returns to what he called the animal realm, a dimension of existence where they continue to exist in a state of perfect harmony with their nature. Think of it as a realm where every dog gets to be the perfect expression of being a dog, where every cat embodies the pure essence of being a cat. But here's the part that might bring tears to your eyes. The animals who formed deep bonds with humans, who loved and were loved in return, they don't just disappear into this collective consciousness. They keep their individual identity. The personality quirks you remember, the specific way they showed affection, their unique responses to your voice. All of that continues because love, according to Cayce, is the force that individualizes consciousness. And the deeper the love, the more permanent the individuality. Your pet's consciousness doesn't dissolve back into a faceless group soul. It remains distinctly them, held in perfect form by the love you shared. And they're not gone. They're not unreachable. They exist in a dimension that's closer to our physical world than you might think. Cayce described this animal realm as existing in what he called the astral plane, a dimension of consciousness that overlaps with our physical reality. It's not some distant heaven. It's here all around us, separated from our perception, not by distance but by frequency. Think of it like radio waves. Just because you can't hear them doesn't mean they're not filling the space around you right now. You just need the right receiver to tune in. And sometimes, just sometimes, the love between you and your pet is strong enough to create that connection. The third revelation: They never really leave. Which brings us to something that might explain experiences you've had but never talked about. Experiences you might have dismissed as wishful thinking or imagination. Have you ever felt your pet's presence after they passed? Maybe you caught a glimpse of movement out of the corner of your eye. That familiar shape that used to greet you at the door. Maybe you heard the soft padding of paws on the floor at night, or felt the sensation of a warm body curling up next to you in bed. Maybe you found yourself talking to them and could swear you felt them listening. According to Cayce, these aren't hallucinations born from grief. They're not your mind playing tricks on you. They're real connections with your pet's continuing consciousness. Because here's what Cayce revealed about the bond between humans and their beloved animals. It creates what he called a soul tie, an energetic connection that death cannot break. Think about this. When you truly love an animal, something metaphysical happens. Your consciousness and theirs become intertwined in ways that go beyond physical existence. You're not just sharing space and time. You're sharing soul energy, and that connection doesn't end when their physical body stops working. Cayce explained that animals who formed deep bonds with humans often choose to remain close to their human companions, at least for a while. They exist in that astral dimension, but they stay near the people they loved. They become what you might call guardian spirits. Now, this doesn't mean they're stuck on Earth or trapped. They're not suffering or caught between worlds. They're simply choosing to maintain their connection with you, because from their perspective, that love is eternal and worth keeping. And here's something beautiful. According to Cayce, they often continue to provide the same emotional and spiritual support they gave you in life. That sense of comfort you felt from your pet, that protection, that unconditional love, it doesn't disappear. It just works from a different dimension. This might explain why so many people report feeling their pet's presence during difficult times, why that sense of companionship returns when you need it most, why you sometimes feel like they're still looking out for you, because they are. If this is resonating with you, if you've had experiences that suddenly make more sense, I want you to share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Maybe it's a friend who's grieving. Maybe it's someone who thinks they're crazy for still feeling their pet's presence. This information isn't just comforting, it's transformative, and it needs to reach the people who are ready for it. The signs and connections. But how do you know if your pet is still around? How do you recognize their presence when it's not physical anymore? Cayce's readings offer some guidance here, and it matches remarkably with the experiences millions of pet owners have reported. The first sign is what Cayce called residual impressions. These are moments when you experience sense memories of your pet that feel completely real and present. The sound of their collar jingling, the feeling of their fur under your hand, the warmth of their body next to yours, the familiar rhythm of their breathing. Science tries to explain these as brain pathways firing based on memory. But Cayce suggested something different. He said, these impressions occur when your pet's consciousness briefly aligns with your awareness, when they're close enough to your frequency that your senses pick up their presence. The second sign is behavioral. You start noticing other animals acting strangely around spaces your pet used to occupy. Dogs sniffing and wagging at empty corners where your cat used to sit. Cats staring intently at the spot where your dog's bed used to be. Birds gathering outside the window your pet used to watch from. Animals, according to Cayce, are naturally more sensitive to astral frequencies than humans. They can often sense the presence of deceased pets when we can't. The third sign is emotional. You experience waves of comfort, love, or peace that seem to come from outside yourself. These feelings often arrive during moments of grief or stress, exactly when your pet would have comforted you in life. Cayce explained that consciousness can send emotional energy across dimensional boundaries. Your pet's love doesn't become less real when it works from the astral plane. If anything, it becomes more pure, more focused, more healing. And then there are the dreams. Cayce placed special importance on dream encounters with deceased pets. He said that during sleep, our consciousness naturally shifts closer to astral frequencies, making contact more possible. But these aren't ordinary dreams. Pet visitation dreams have specific characteristics. They feel more real than regular dreams. Your pet appears healthy and happy, often younger or in their prime. The emotional connection feels as strong as it did in life, and you wake up with a sense of peace and completion that regular dreams don't provide. According to Cayce, these dream meetings are actual soul-to-soul communications. Your pet is reaching across dimensions to let you know they're okay, to remind you that love continues, to provide healing for your grief. The deeper purpose. But why? Why do our pets stay close? Why do they continue to offer comfort and connection from beyond the physical world? This is where Cayce's revelations become truly deep. Because according to his readings, the relationships we form with animals serve a purpose far greater than companionship. They're actually part of our spiritual education. Think about what your pet taught you. Unconditional love, living in the present moment, joy in simple pleasures, loyalty, forgiveness, the ability to love without judgment. These aren't just nice qualities. According to Cayce, they're fundamental spiritual principles that humans often struggle to learn. We get caught up in our egos, our fears, our complicated emotional dramas. We forget how to love purely. Animals don't have these complications. They love from their essential nature. And when they bond with us, they become our teachers in the art of pure love. But here's the remarkable part. This teaching doesn't end when they die. Cayce suggested that many pets choose to remain connected to their humans specifically to continue this spiritual guidance. They become what you might think of as love anchors, reminders of how to love without condition, how to be present, how to find joy in existence itself. That presence you feel from your deceased pet, it's not just comfort, it's continued spiritual education. And there's something else, something that might change how you see every interaction you ever had with your beloved animal. According to Cayce, the animals who choose to bond deeply with humans are often the most spiritually advanced members of their species. They're the ones who have individualized enough from group consciousness to serve as bridges between human and animal awareness. In other words, your pet chose you not just as a human to live with, but as a soul to connect with. They recognized something in your spiritual development that they could help with, and you recognized something in them that your soul needed. This means every moment of love you shared wasn't accidental. It was part of a larger spiritual plan that both of your souls agreed to before coming to life. Let me pause here and ask you something. Are you starting to see your relationship with your pet in a completely different light? Are you beginning to understand that what you thought was just a beautiful friendship was actually a sacred spiritual partnership? If so, take a moment and subscribe to this channel because what we're exploring here is just the beginning. There's so much more to understand about consciousness, spiritual connections, and the hidden dimensions of reality that most people never hear about. And I want to make sure you don't miss any of it. The healing truth. Now I need to address something that might be causing you pain right now. Because if you're watching this video, there's a good chance you're grieving. There's a good chance you've lost a pet recently, or the memory of that loss is still painful. And I want you to know that Cayce's revelations about animal consciousness offer something that traditional comfort often can't. They offer healing that goes beyond just feeling better. Because here's what changes when you truly understand what Cayce revealed. Your grief doesn't disappear, but it transforms. Instead of feeling like you've lost your pet forever, you begin to understand that you've simply moved into a different phase of your relationship. The love is still there. The connection is still real, only the form has changed. This isn't about denial or wishful thinking. This is about expanding your understanding of what relationship actually means. When you realize that consciousness continues, that love goes beyond physical form, that the bond you shared was formed at a soul level, everything shifts. The guilt many pet owners carry. Did I do enough? Could I have saved them? Did they know how much I love them? These questions take on new meaning when you understand that your pet's consciousness continues and that they can still feel your love. According to Cayce, the love you continue to send to your deceased pet actually reaches them. It supports their existence in the astral realm. It strengthens the connection between you. So when you find yourself missing them, when you catch yourself talking to their picture or visiting their favorite spot, you're not talking to emptiness. You're maintaining a relationship that death couldn't end. And there's something else that might surprise you. Cayce suggested that many pets, after spending time in the astral realm, eventually choose to reincarnate. And when they do, they often seek out their beloved humans again. This doesn't always mean coming back as the same species or even as an animal. Sometimes they come back as other pets. Sometimes they influence their humans to adopt specific animals who need love. Sometimes they guide new pets into their humans' lives. Have you ever met a new pet and felt an instant, unexplainable connection? Have you ever looked into an animal's eyes and felt like you knew them somehow? According to Cayce, this might not be coincidence. The soul that loved you continues to love you, and love finds a way to express itself even across lifetimes. The greater mystery. But let's zoom out for a moment, because what Cayce revealed about animals and consciousness points to something even larger. Something that completely reframes how we understand reality itself. If consciousness survives death, if love creates lasting connections across dimensions, if beings can communicate and influence each other from different planes of existence, then what does this say about the nature of reality? It suggests that what we call physical life is just one layer of a much more complex, interconnected system of consciousness. It implies that relationships, love, and awareness work by laws that physics is only beginning to glimpse. And it means that nothing you love is ever truly lost. Think about this for a moment. Not just about your pets, but about everyone and everything you've ever deeply loved. According to Cayce's revelations, consciousness is eternal. Love creates lasting bonds. Connection goes beyond physical form. Your pet's continuing existence isn't an exception to the rules of reality. It's an example of how reality actually works. This is why Edgar Cayce's work was so revolutionary. He wasn't just giving comfort to grieving pet owners. He was revealing the fundamental structure of existence itself, a structure where consciousness is primary, where love is a creative force, and where physical death is simply a transition to a different state of being. And if this is true for animals, what might it mean for human consciousness, for human relationships, for human death? These are the questions that Cayce's work opens up. And they're questions that could transform not just how you grieve your pets, but how you understand life itself. But before we go there, I want to bring this back to something immediate and practical, because understanding these larger implications is beautiful, but there's something more important you need to know. If you're grieving a pet right now, if you're struggling with the pain of loss, if you're questioning whether they're okay or whether you'll ever see them again, Cayce's revelations offer you something precious. Certainty, not belief, not hope, not comfort. Certainty. Your pet's consciousness continues. Your love for them is eternal. The bond you shared goes beyond physical death, and in ways you might not expect, they're still with you. The call to openness. But here's what I need you to understand. This information is only as powerful as your willingness to be open to it. We live in a culture that teaches us to dismiss experiences that don't fit into neat materialistic categories. We are told that consciousness comes from the brain, that death is the end, that love is just chemical reactions, that spiritual experiences are either hallucinations or wishful thinking. But what if all of that is wrong? What if consciousness is primary and the brain is just its physical instrument? What if death is a doorway, not a wall? What if love is the most fundamental force in the universe? What if spiritual experiences are glimpses of reality that materialism can't explain? Edgar Cayce's work suggests that these what-ifs are actually the way things are, and the experiences millions of people have had with their deceased pets, experiences they've been taught to dismiss or doubt, are evidence of a reality far more beautiful and connected than we've been told. So I'm going to ask you to do something that might feel uncomfortable. I'm going to ask you to trust your experiences. If you felt your pet's presence after they died, trust that. If you've had dreams of them that felt more real than ordinary dreams, trust that. If you've experienced moments of comfort that seem to come from outside yourself, trust that. If you've had the sense that they're still watching over you, still caring for you, still loving you, trust that. Because according to Cayce and according to the experiences of countless pet owners around the world, these aren't delusions. They're perceptions of a dimension of reality that most people have forgotten how to see. And when you start trusting these experiences, when you stop dismissing them as just your imagination, something remarkable happens. You begin to perceive more. You become more sensitive to the subtle communications, the gentle presences, the ongoing love that surrounds you. You don't just start believing in your pet's continuing existence. You start experiencing it. Let me ask you something. What would change in your life if you knew with absolute certainty that consciousness is eternal? That love creates unbreakable bonds. That death is not an ending, but a transformation. If you're willing to consider this possibility, if you're ready to expand your understanding of what's real and what's possible, I want you to do something for me. I want you to comment below with the name of a pet you've loved. Whether they're still with you or they've passed on, just their name, because names have power. When we speak the names of those we love, we're acknowledging their reality, their importance, their place in our hearts. And in ways that go beyond the physical, they hear us. The transformation. Here's what I've discovered in my own journey of exploring these ideas. When you truly accept that consciousness is eternal, and that love goes beyond death, it doesn't just change how you grieve your pets. It changes how you live your life. Because if your pet's consciousness continues, if your love for them creates a lasting bond, if they can still influence your life from the astral realm, then every moment you shared with them was infinitely more precious than you realized. Every time you petted them mindlessly while watching TV, you were sharing soul energy. Every time they comforted you during difficult times, they were providing spiritual healing. Every moment of play, every walk, every quiet evening together. These weren't just pleasant experiences. They were exchanges of pure love that created lasting patterns in the fabric of consciousness itself. And if this is true for the animals in your life, what might it mean for all your relationships? What if every interaction with every conscious being is an opportunity for spiritual exchange? What if love really is the most powerful force in the universe? This is the transformation that Edgar Cayce's revelations can offer you. Not just comfort about your pets, but a complete reframing of existence itself. You begin to see that you're not just a biological organism struggling to survive in a meaningless universe. You're an eternal consciousness learning to love more fully, more purely, more unconditionally. And the animals in your life, past, present, and future, are your teachers, your companions, and your spiritual family. This changes everything. It changes how you treat animals. When you understand that they're conscious beings on their own spiritual journey, every interaction becomes sacred. It changes how you grieve. When you know that love continues beyond death, grief becomes not just mourning for what's lost, but gratitude for what continues. It changes how you love. When you realize that the bonds you create go beyond physical existence, every moment of connection becomes infinitely precious, and it changes how you see yourself. You're not just someone who happened to love an animal. You're someone whose capacity for pure love was recognized and honored by a conscious being who chose to share their life with you. The continuing journey. But I want to be clear about something. Edgar Cayce's revelations about animals and consciousness aren't the end of the story. They're the beginning of a much larger exploration. Because if consciousness is eternal, if love creates lasting bonds, if reality includes dimensions we can't ordinarily perceive, then what else might be true? What about human consciousness? What about the nature of time? What about the possibility of communication across dimensions? What about the role of love in creating and sustaining reality itself? These are the questions that Cayce's work opens up, and they're questions that science, spirituality, and direct experience are all beginning to explore in fascinating ways. We're living in a time when the boundaries between science and spirituality are dissolving, when quantum physics is discovering that consciousness might be fundamental to reality, when near-death experience research is providing evidence that awareness continues beyond brain death, when thousands of people are reporting direct experiences of expanded consciousness. Edgar Cayce was ahead of his time, but we might finally be catching up to the reality he glimpsed in his trance states, and your experience with your beloved pets. The love you shared, the presence you still feel, the continuing bond that death couldn't break, might be evidence of truths that will reshape human understanding in the coming decades. So I want to leave you with this. You're not just someone missing a pet. You're someone who has experienced the eternal nature of consciousness and love. You've had direct contact with the continuity of awareness beyond physical death. You've participated in a relationship that goes beyond the material world. That makes you a witness, a pioneer. Someone who knows firsthand that reality is far more beautiful, connected, and meaningful than most people realize. And that knowledge, that experience, it's not just for your comfort. It's for sharing. It's for helping others understand that death is not the end, that love is eternal, and that the bonds we create with conscious beings continue beyond anything that physical existence can offer. Your pet's love for you didn't end when their body stopped working, and your love for them doesn't have to be trapped in the past. It can be a living, ongoing relationship that enriches your life and helps you become more loving, more aware, more connected to the deeper currents of existence. This is what Edgar Cayce revealed about animals and consciousness. This is what millions of pet owners have experienced but been afraid to talk about. And this is what might change everything about how humanity understands life, death, and the power of love. Your pet is still with you, not just in memory but in reality. Not just in your heart but in dimensions of existence that love makes accessible. And that connection, that eternal bond, it's one of the most beautiful truths you'll ever discover. Trust it, honor it, and let it transform not just how you remember your beloved companion, but how you live every moment of your life. Because love, this pure, this transcendent, this eternal, it changes everything and it never ever ends.